Okay, folks, now it's going to be time for a special interview portion of the show. We're going to be joined by a Texas Indy legend, the one and only sexy Steve DeMarco. Steve, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you guys for having me and calling me a Texas legend. That's I think that might be a first or second that I've heard that. So I am pleasantly surprised. So
it's better to go ahead and call it now, so that way, whenever you are, fully head on, without question, legend, we'll be able to say, well, we called him that long before.
That's true. You knew it long before anyone else did. So.
Absolutely. So welcome to the show. You recently came back from spending a good portion of the year out on injury. How does it feel to be back in the ring?
It's kind of like a whole new day for me, I guess, in part. Just to be able to wrestle virtually pain-free is obviously a blessing. I'm having a blast. I mean, on a physical level, I think match 6 is this Saturday at Gulf Coast. Mm-hmm. First few matches, my cardio, my wind, even though I train extensively trying to get my cardio up, for some reason, I think just jitters and whatnot, the first few matches, I felt like my wind just wasn't really where it needed to be. But this past weekend, I felt kind of like not only my wind, but my legs were under me, a little more stable. I'm able to kind of move better. I mean, I train real extensively, trying to drop some weight and get more flexible and whatnot. But, it's true what they say. Nothing really prepares you for being in a ring. And even though I had been in a ring a few times, it was still kind of just a new endeavor for me. But I feel, better than I've felt in a long time. And I feel pretty good about this Saturday. But, yeah, man, I have enjoyed my time back. And I think that was kind of the initial hope I told myself and those close to me that I wasn't going to come back unless I was physically 100% and as well as, mentally, emotionally, and my outlook on things was 100% positive. And so I'm just happy to be back, being able to do it and being able to entertain and give the fans a show and give them a reason to mark out and all that.
Well, it's good to see you back in the ring. So
we can say that we've seen 2 of the 6 comeback matches so far, and we'll see 3 of the 7 this Saturday. We'll be there.
Awesome. Yeah, I guess my first match was with Max Muscles for the title, and my 6th match, I guess, will be Max for the title. So it's kind of slow, short for a short circle. It's kind of gone full circle, but. So you guys have been to Gulf Coast, I know that.
Oh yeah, we're big fans of promoting our local indie shows, and
we actually drove up to see you for Texas All-Star Wrestling as well this past month.
Yeah, at Coach's.
Right, yes.
Against Killer Cash. That's right. So yeah,
right.
That was actually when I announced, because I had done it at TASW, because that was the place where I had announced I was going to take some time. And at the time when I announced it, I was really not sure. And if you had asked me back then, I was really swaying towards, well, it was a fun career. Maybe it's time to transition to something else. And so initially I was going to go back there, and that TASW show was going to be the first one against Cash. But strangely enough, the night that I had announced and posted on Facebook that I was indeed going to make my return to the ring, and started announcing what date, I got called by the powers that be at Gulf Coast and asked, hey, would you like to come in? And I'm like, sure, tell me what's going on. And they were like, well, it's for the title. And I went, well, all right, you had me at a low, so, But,
now, I'm sorry. I did hear an interview earlier in the year, I want to say around April, where you did say it was shortly after you had announced that you were done for a while, at least at that point. And you kind of were throwing it out there like, well, if I can get right, I may have a good year run left in me, or just kind of playing it by ear about how you feel. Can we say this is like full on comeback, like DeMarco's back to be back for good? Or is this like because you mentioned maybe a list of guys you wanted to work one more time, or some guys that you never got to work, or?
Well, the whole even announcing that I was going to take time off really caught me by surprise. I mean, it was, I don't want to say ironic, but just weird timing that at the same time Edge was going through, announcing his retirement, I was kind of struggling with the same thing. So, and during the interview process at Indy Wars, I wanted to try to put a positive spin. I really wasn't sure what I was going to do, but I'd always said that if I was to go out, or if I could write myself out a certain way, and if all things being good, that I'd have at least one final good run and be able to wrestle, a litany of guys that I'd wanted to wrestle and whatnot. And that's kind of where the list came. And I felt like, well, if I come back too, then I have a purpose. A lot of times in the Indies, at least hasn't been my experience lately, but I've seen it and I've experienced it, and I've been on kind of both sides of the fence where you're brought in and there's really not a set story for you, or, well, we're not really sure where we want to put you or what we want to do with you, or we want to put you on the back burner, or, yeah, we don't really have a plan. I'd rather have some sense of, okay, why am I doing this? For me, especially like at All-Star, was a matter of, well, if I come back, I want to come back and try to get the title. That was something I'd never done in my career up until this point at TASW. Same thing with Gulf Coast. It's like, well, let me come in for titles. If for no other reason, then I feel like, okay, I'm not such a young guy that I'm trying to make a name for myself and that I'm going to wrestle for Indy A, Indy B, Indy C. Now it's like, well, I really want to wrestle for a reason. And I figured, well, here comes the list. But to answer your question, nothing's for certain. I found that out firsthand. A doctor can tell you you're done. And even though you've had all these plans set in motion or in your mind with that simple phrase, it all changes. So, I'm going to do it as long as I can do it. And by that meaning that I've always had this goal of being able to walk out under my own power, not being wheeled off or doing it to the point where people just are tired of the act. And no matter how I try to evolve it, they're just tired of the act. And I don't want it to get to that point, nor do I want to get it to a point where I'm bitter and I hate the business, and you can tell I hate the business when I'm in the locker room. I don't want that to happen either. So it's a matter of, okay, well, if I'm in a positive frame of mind and, everywhere I go, we're just trying to get to the next level or trying to get to the next step, or I can wrestle that list of people that I'd like to wrestle, I'll continue doing it. But the day that it's not fun for me or it's not fun for the audience, then, it's time to hang it up before I outstay my welcome.
I know you've had matches with like Sabu, Lance Hoyt, and was it this past Sunday you had a match with Ronnie Mack?
Yes.
Is there anyone that's on your list that you want to wrestle?
I'd love to wrestle Lance again. Mm-hmm. Simply, he's spent some time in Japan. I got a chance to kind of wrestle him earlier in the year at TCW, but the problem with that was I was really at the point of not sure if I could continue to go. Yeah. So I felt, that was one that I definitely want to do again, because me and Lance did really good business back in the PCW days. We did, some great stuff, and I think, if you put us two together, we have great chemistry. Another guy that I was hoping to get a chance to wrestle again was Mike Fox out of the Dallas area. And we had even talked about possibly doing something at MPX, which is a promotion he had been working for, but I believe he announced his retirement as of last Saturday. As far as guys that I would like to wrestle, I'd definitely like to be in the ring with Booker T one time, before he or I hang it up, only because I got to train with him for a while, and I learned quite a bit from him, and it'd be great to kind of see, to lock horns with a guy you consider a mentor. Yeah. But aside from that, there's some guys. I mean, there's guys like ACH out of ACW, he's the current ACW heavyweight champion. There's probably a list of guys there. I mean, I've worked Scott Summers, who's, considered a big name here, and Jacobs Pliskin, I wrestled him. It'd be a guy that I'd like to wrestle again. There's Ken Carson, who's pretty solid. Yeah, and there's guys like Q, that, from TASW and a few other promotions. It's kind of one of those things, man. As far as, there's certain names. Yeah, obviously in the best case scenario, if I could work, Chris Hero, or if I could work, Davey Richards, or there's just a list of guys that I could think of. Certain guys here and there, but the list is by far not complete. There's guys in Texas. Oh man, I want to wrestle Tim Storm one more time, or Wally Darkman, I want to wrestle him one more time, or there's certain guys that Darren Childs out of ACW, I want to wrestle him at least once. I think we wrestled one time early in our careers. It'd be good to kind of get in the ring again and kind of see what we've learned over the past years.
Let's go.
But, obviously it'd be great to be on a WWE roster, TNA roster, and work some of those guys. There's such a both of them, including Ring of Honor, they all have great rosters. And there's a lot of talent there that I haven't had the opportunity to just even kind of see what we could come up with, and see what we could create and what story we could tell, aside from just the normal, bad guy, good guy, or I hate you, you hate me, but, kind of see what we could create in there. And there's other guys. Jared Steele out of PWA. I think I wrestled him once long ago, and it's kind of one of those things. Well, it'd be good to kind of wrestle him again. But other guys. Brian Davidson's another one. Had a series of matches with. I enjoyed. A Sensation. He's another one. If I could, if we could find him somewhere, or if I have to go to PW to locate him, but. He'd be another one.
Yeah.
I've got my friends that I'm close with. There are guys that I like to wrestle, and there's some guys that I have wrestled. I get the luxury of getting to wrestle like Max Muscles. This Saturday, I have a blast wrestling him, and more importantly, it is for a title. And then, guys like Rockstar Robbie, who I got to wrestle last time I was at Gulf Coast, albeit in a tag match. But, there's a whole bunch of guys throughout the state that I'd like to wrestle. I'd like, more importantly, to know who would like to get in the ring with me, or who what shows I could get booked on and see what, what's out there.
Kind of, since you were kind of running through a who's name of top Texas talent, I just, not to be too much of a downer, but and we're not extremely familiar with the guy, but we did notice that, Spiro had passed away this past week. And I know, it was from what I've seen online, it was a huge blow to the Texas wrestling community, and a lot of guys were affected by this. If you could just speak on that a little bit.
Well, when I had found out, because I think I had found out through Scott Summers about it, again, on Facebook, Facebook's kind of taken the place of text messaging or phone calls. It's the way of getting, you can get information out fast. So once I found that out, and I was trying to find out what happened, obviously, and again, it was a big shock because he wasn't that. I'm older than him, for one. Spiro has kind of struck me as a guy who had it, and by it, he had the respect of the business. He was trained really well early on. Any guy who came out of Shawn Michaels' school at that time knew their psychology. He was technically one of the most solid guys out there. He can make any guy look great. Started a career of a guy, first match of a guy for Gustavo Mendoza, who works at Booker T's and, has gone on to do great things. But that was his first match, and the guy kind of set the wheels in motion. He was the epitome of what a professional wrestler is. As far as his look, he wore the right gear. He had boots. Even in his earlier incarnation, when he was doing, kind of a Dark Lord character, he was still one of those guys who had a mindset for it. He had a passion for it, and you just could tell he had the goods, and had opportunity, had the right look, the right body. And anytime, it's one thing to hear of a guy who, tragic accident or something like that, but, just tragedy, befalling a guy who's probably still in the prime of his life, and a guy that, a lot of us got to share a locker room with. It's one of those things where, you take it for granted that we're all going to be around. You don't expect something like this. And he was one of my contemporaries, and for him to pass, and a lot of us, especially some of the top guys in Texas, we've either worked in a ring with him or been part of a locker room and watched him. And even though he wasn't the most vocal of people, he was a guy that if he said something, you respected what he had to say. and he's going to be truly missed because that's a rarity, especially there's not as many veterans and there's not as many guys who kind of have the know-how, and more importantly, don't carry themselves like they are the best thing or they're a superstar to every other guy on the indie level. I mean, he was one of those guys who would help young guys. He'd help, whoever he could. Men, women, didn't really matter. Was respectful to everyone from the janitor to the guy paying you, and and including all the boys in the back. And again, the epitome of professional wrestler is, what I think will be his legacy. If he, and he is going to be missed only, in many ways for a lot of different people. So,
well, you touched base on that he had the sort of an it factor per se. A lot of people have said that about you. You have like the natural born charisma and all that. What was the passion that got you into the wrestling business? Like, what was your drive for it?
Well, I probably, like all guys who are fairly successful at it, I was a fan. I mean, I was a fan from the Von Erichs, Kerry Von Erich winning the NWA World title against Ric Flair with a backslide. The old school Stinger when he, everything was color coordinated. It wasn't just black and red. It was, full myriad of colors. Ultimate Warrior, Hogan, all of those. I grew up just loving it. And I probably knew early on it was made up or make believe or not real or fake or whatever, or scripted or whatever have you. But I didn't care about that. I cared about the stories and the characters. And honestly, through high school, I mean, my parents probably could tell you that's what I wanted to do. I probably didn't want to be anything else but a professional wrestler. I went through life, and really kind of what made me go, I could probably go to school for it was I was actually in the service, and a few of us actually talked and were big fans of it and would watch Nitro and Raw, and we were engulfed in the Monday Night Wars. And but I'd hear every couple of guys say that they were going to go to wrestling school, and I said, well, I looked at them and I looked at myself, and I thought I was in better shape. And once my hair grew back, I think I'd be a fairly decent-looking guy, so why not try it? And I think from my first bump on, I was hooked. And at first, my goals were real kind of small. It was, I just want to have one match. I don't really care about anything else. I just really want to have one match, just to say I did it. But once I got through the schooling and all of that, and once I got to my first match, that was, I want my next match. And I think what drove me, too, was, especially initially, the person who trained me was really solid and knew his stuff and was very old school and very respectful and really pushed me to just want to learn every aspect of what it was to be a professional wrestler in every sense of the word. And I just had such immense love and passion for it. And I was blessed in a way that not only did I have an older guy who had been through it in the 50s and 60s and made it kind of his career in California, and then, I was lucky enough to come along and, be trained by him. But then I had Russell Simpson, who went on, has gone on to do like international stuff, Japan, done like Psycho Simpson, worked Doc Sheedham elsewhere, and a guy that, I literally would come. Our class is on Saturday, for instance, and we're at 2 p.m., and I'd be there at noon with this guy, and we'd just be going over everything I had learned. And it was just until it became second nature, because that's how I was instilled with it. It was kind of this sense. I mean, it's funny because when I first got to the school, it was I was told by the guy who took the money that if I didn't pay in full and if I didn't make every practice, that was humanly possible to make, that I'd be blackballed from the business. And it just, I was in such fear of it that initially that I was always paid on time, and I always did this and always did that, and I did everything that I could to just pay my respect forward because I loved it so much. And again, once I got into it, and I think the one thing that I found is I surrounded myself with guys who were equally talented, and we, had our opinions of what made a great wrestler, and we'd have these matches that we thought were the most amazing thing, and then we'd look back at them and go, man, if we could have done this, it would have been better, or so on and so forth. And just being aligned with the right people, getting the right, getting kind of the right situations, just kept fueled the fire, so to speak, and I enjoyed it. So,
Been hooked on it ever since.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's one of those things. I wrestle friends in backyards and just playing around and stuff. But my folks probably would have, from an early age, probably first time I saw it, I was like, that's what I want to do.
Nice.
So
I want to talk a little bit about your behind the curtain. It's sort of an in-depth look at indie promotions in Texas. What was the thought process in creating that?
Well, myself and Justin Smith. Justin is probably the brainchild, so to speak, because he does all the editing, all the beautiful, shiny things that you see. We had worked together in the past. We had worked on a promotion known as IWE back in 2009, and I'll say I was blessed to have met him because I really wanted video product as much as humanly possible for a promotion. I felt that was lacking even as far back as 2009. I was like, why aren't more people using YouTube? Why aren't more people using social media? Why aren't you promoting yourself in that way? It's a free, especially YouTube, it's free to upload videos. All you need is a camera. I would have done it myself. I lucked out, found Justin, and we had worked for promotion for about a year and created a buzz. And then we both got unceremoniously let go, and we just kind of, okay, well, we parted ways for a little bit. He did his thing, I did mine, and when I announced that I was, taking some time off, I got asked to book one show and to write another or help consult with another. And I wanted to bring Jay on board because any place I wanted to work, I'm like, look, you've got to have video production. I mean, it's a shame if you don't. You've got to have video production as much as humanly possible. So Jay and I talked, and initially we came up with this idea of creating kind of we're going to look at these two separate promotions and see the good and the bad and decide. But then once we started just filming stuff on the road and conversations and such, we were like, well, we could put it together, these highlight packages, and kind of bring out indie wrestling in a different light and kind of show the true what's really going on. And it never was really, we wanted to show what we liked about indie wrestling or what we didn't like about indie wrestling. And a lot of stuff's on the cutting room floor, stuff that we never really wanted to paint it in such a negative light. I think until episode 9, we really tried our hardest to be very positive because we felt like, well, we're not being part of the solution if we're just complaining like everybody else. Right. But with shows canceling and whatnot, we found well, there's reason to complain because the reality is there's stuff to complain about. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, now we're like, well, we've done behind the curtain, and I think by episode 5, Justin was already thinking of a new way of presenting what we're doing. We have so much footage that we have yet to release, but I know we're taking a little time. We're going to do some stuff for Christmas for the fans that have liked the show, and I appreciate everybody who comes to us or comes to me and says, the show's great, and all the people that watch it. I think our page only has 290 subscribers, yet we average 5 times that as in the amount of views, and that's kind of skewed because a lot of times, my Lucha Lounge I might have 1,400 subscribers, but only 100, 200 people watch my show. That's how many views I get. So the fact that we get, ratio-wise, we get a pretty good hit ratio. Mm-hmm. But we want to definitely put it in a different direction. I mean, I think we want to present it in such a way that it's going to reach a bigger audience than what it's already reached. I mean, we came up with Behind the Curtain because we didn't want to just be pigeonholed as just a wrestling show. Because at the time, too, it was, well, wrestling's kind of a silly word, and more people are fans of MMA. And if you say you're a wrestling fan, well, you're stupid. And it's like, I don't think like that because I'm still a big wrestling fan. I still enjoy watching it. I still mark out to a lot of stuff. And I'm fans of people who are fans of it because, we are in a situation where, well, people are saying, some people say, well, wrestling's dead. And it's like, no, it's not. It's kind of it's alive and well. You just you've got to find the gems that are out there. And I think, with Behind the Curtain, that's what we wanted to present. We wanted to present the way companies were presenting their product and those that were successful and those that weren't and how to fix it because, I mean, it is fixable, I think. I posed a question on Facebook a while back and even did a video about it, like, does indie wrestling need a reality check? And, the answer is yes, it does. It needs to kind of be shown itself in a mirror and go, look, this is what's wrong. This is what but, it's not like we can't fix it. Let's fix it. How can we fix it?
Right.
And creating that dialogue, especially with guys, when I go backstage, it's always, how can we fix it? How can we make it better? How can we entertain the fans more? How can we get more fans, and so on and so forth? So I know probably coming 2012, we're going to do some new things with Behind the Curtain as far as how we present it and just different formats and try and get different sources of info to drive, just to put wrestling back as far as just a positive way of thinking, especially indie wrestling.
Can we get a WNS podcast exclusive as to the new direction of the next year?
Well, we can't specify. All I'm going to say is it's something that gets presented to a lot of people. We're just going to put wrestling out there. We're going to try to just do different things. I think there are a lot of talented guys and gals that do the wrestling stuff and that love it. But we always want to try to present the wrestlers in different scenarios. We also want to try to just do different things as far as just how we present it to see, well, what's going to get the biggest reaction. Because especially on YouTube, when you've got a guy like Zack Ryder who draws so many hits, and it's just basic. I mean, especially initially, it was just him and no one else. It was him and a camera. But he was getting such an amount of hits that, obviously, look at him now. And we're looking at our program going, well, we present all this stuff. It's just a matter of getting people to see it. Right. Well, what's it going to take? Is it title change? Is this, that, and the other? So we're working on some stuff, but Justin's kind of he's going to unleash it on the world when he's ready. And when he's ready, I'm just kind of along for the ride. We're going to continue to do Behind the Curtain, kind of the format that we do, where we do the car trip to and from the show, kind of before and after. We always like to do a Schiavone segment where I basically Tony Schiavone it up and try to put it over as big and huge as humanly possible. Mm-hmm. And we want to put some more of that stuff out, and as well as just kind of figure out who our cast of characters are, aside from the promotions, who's really out there that's going to be a regular on the show and that we're going to be able to showcase a little bit better. So, and putting wrestlers in strange situations. But, it's going to be a whole lot of fun. I think 2012 is going to be one of those, seasons where we can just kind of experiment.
As well as extras, you guys have some really awesome, gem of extras, particularly the international story from Ruthless Ryan Davison.
That was awesome. That was a favorite.
Yeah, awesome. and the funny thing about that is there's a whole there's probably about 10 more minutes of additional footage that we cut out because we let Ryan look at it beforehand, and there was this really poignant story, but we were like, no, that's kind of a personal story, and so we do listen to our talent, but yeah, the international story, it caught me by surprise too, because I know what the dummy spot is, but if he had gone, hey, do the international, I probably would have looked at him too, like, I've been doing this 11 years. What's the international? I might have asked him. I might have come out and, what do you mean? But and then quickly been shown the door or something. So
yeah.
I do want to say that, and we have been really plugging Behind the Curtain here, and I want to say if there's any of our listeners who have not jumped on board yet, you're really missing out because it's a super entertaining show, and we're really huge fans of it, and we're really looking forward to see what you guys do in the coming year.
Yeah, we had an original plan, I think, because we were mapping out dates, and I knew what dates were I was going to consult, and then once it got closer to, I think Jay was the first one to know that I was even contemplating a return. I think it was just a matter of being on Behind the Curtain. That kind of fueled it, too. I'm watching guys going, and then seeing the footage we're putting out going, well, why can't I be on there? Aside from just talking, why can't I do something? Because I think, Jay's one of the most talented visual guys as far as putting together a package, especially considering that a lot of what we put together is off one camera. It's not multiple cameras. We don't have the luxury of having, WWE's budget or even IWE's budget. We're just, it's seriously, episode 3 said it best, I think, one camera, zero budget. We're doing it purely for the love. I think, that's another thing that we have to look at the economics of the situation and go, well, gas money, even if I get booked for a show, it's like, well, can you pay Jay? because he's going to make your product look better than anything else that's going to be put out there. Period. I mean, we've gone to ACW, we went to Doomsday, we did MPX, we went to a variety of places, and outside of ACW, there's not really a video presence for a lot of companies, and so it's like, well, it would behoove you to hire him or whatnot, but we've had a blast doing it. I mean, initially we had this idea, and then episode 9, or what took place during episode 9, kind of changed everything, changed our outlook on what we were going to do as far as with the show, and it really kind of, I don't want to say, I try really not to say I've ever had a bad taste in my mouth when it comes to wrestling. I know, I knew what I signed up for when I signed up for it. However, that day that the kind of episode 9 is about, really, it put a really bad taste in my mouth as far as what independent wrestling has become. Mm-hmm. And it's like, now it's like, well, we need to fix it. We need to focus on the companies that are doing really well and are doing right by the boys and the girls and by the fans as well. And, so, I mean, it changed kind of our outlook, and it definitely changed what we were going to do with the show. And then it became, well, we definitely want to switch it. And now we have a reason to switch formats or whatnot. Again, behind the curtain, we'll always be there, but who knows? We're looking to expand as as the coming year comes upon us.
Now, I'm not sure if it was ever like explicitly stated, and I just missed it in one of the episodes. But why is it that you guys refer to ACW as Company A?
Well, initially, kind of, we would refer to like NWA Houston as Company N. We hadn't been there yet, and our thought was, well, if we're not invited to come do your show, why are we going to put over your show? Now if a company wants us to come in, and we know a lot of companies that invited us, we're more than happy to come down. I mean, Doomsday was one of the first that we approached as fans because we're fans of that show, and I don't really give two shits about what anyone says about that product. To me, it's the most entertaining product out there on the indie scene.
It is. It's great.
And I don't care that it's a comedy show or that the guys aren't trained wrestlers or whatever. I go to some indie shows and I'm not entertained, not at all. I'm ready to leave by the first promo. And so I go to Doomsday, and I've taken wrestling buddies with me, and always initially it's, I don't want to go to this show because it's making a mockery of what we're doing. I'm like, okay, shut your brain off for a second. What were you before you were a wrestler? I was a fan. Well, be a fan and just go and just watch. Turn your head off and just watch, like you used to watch Raw, like you used to watch SmackDown, like you used to watch, well, not TNA, like you used to watch WCW or whatever, and remember what it was like to be a fan. And then when I sit down, that's what I do. I just watch it like I'm a fan. And, but initially we weren't ACW, they have their own stuff. They've got Smart Mark Video, and they are one of the darlings of the internet. So, it was good in a way that once we said, hey, we'd like to come do your show, we were approached with open arms, and they were very forthcoming. And same thing with MPX. They kind of went above and beyond when it comes to putting us over. Like, you've got to talk to these guys, and you've got, be very open to them. And MPX, I knew most of the roster. Same thing with ACW. I know every one of those guys. Darren and I are old friends. We kind of broke into business together. We used to travel together, so, it wasn't like I've only had flack from one company in the city of Houston, and, at this point, and one we haven't really approached, but everyone else has kind of been, if they know the product. We have ran into a couple promotions that didn't know what the proctor was or what we were doing, or, why does Jay have to be at ringside, and why do you have guys have to be backstage? And it's like, well, that's what we do.
Right.
Want your talent to get over, this is what we do.
That's what the camera's for.
Yeah, that's what the camera's for, to get yourself fucking over. That's right. But I have ran into some that I sent them emails, or I sent them a Facebook message, and I send them a link, and I send them a link to the last couple of videos, and I send them a link to the playlist. I'm send them a link to Doja Productions, and I send them all this stuff, and go, look, we can do the same thing for your show. Not going to cost you anything. At least initially, it's not going to cost you anything because, we're going to come in, we're going to showcase your stuff. We're going to either present you with a DVD or a package, or we're going to put out a package, and then, we can go from there. But, and I ran into flack from a couple of companies as far as like, well, this, that, and the other. So
you've touched base on trying to get the product out on YouTube, on Facebook, and such. We've tried to do the same as far as passing out flyers to the local people going to the local shows, and do you feel like some of the people who are just fans of WWE are afraid of following the indies because they think it's not as great? Or what's your take on the strictly WWE fans who never even knew that there's an indie show in their town?
Well, my thought on it is they do have a point to some degree. There are some indies that if you took a regular fan to, they'd have no reason to go back, because the product's inferior. Inferior in the sense that it feels inferior, not because you're trying to compare it to WWE. You're just trying to compare it to some semblance of wrestling, and you're going, it's inferior. So in that instance, I can see it. But that also is the mindset probably of a lot of mainstream fans, those that don't go to the indies, is that, well, it's subpar. It's not the same. You're not going to get the same talent that you would get at a WWE show because they have all the smoke and mirrors. They have the immense pyro, and they have the immense sets. They've got, 25 trucks for production. And so it's always going to look nice and glossy. And the guys and the gals look like they either go to a gym or they look athletic or they look like they belong. And then you take them to most indie shows, and maybe the guys don't have the right gear, they don't have the right look.
Just got off of work.
Yeah, they look like, they just rolled out of bed. I know I would get that a lot, especially when I would wear the PJs. But at the same time, I always say, well, go to one show. And that's the only thing you can hope for, is that they will go to a show and that they will like it. But I know, a lot of fans, and it is troublesome, but I was probably the same way. Growing up as a kid, I probably wouldn't have wanted to go to an indie show necessarily because I would still have that mindset of, well, it's inferior. Because if they were that good, they would be on TV.
Right.
I run into that argument with my folks. I used to run into that argument with a lot of my family when, especially early in my career, I did a show in Corpus and I had family there, and it was a big deal, and they saw all this stuff, and then it was like, well, why aren't you on TV? And it's like, well, if it was that simple, everyone would be on TV. It's not that simple. And I've had these arguments with friends and former girlfriends, so on and so forth, of, well, it should be easy. You've got this, you've got the it. Why aren't you there? And it's like, well, it's not that easy. You take a guy like Lance Hoyt, got the look, got the style, this, that, and the other, looked like he was getting a pretty decent push in WWE to a point, and then, well, now he's gone. Well, why is he gone? The guy should be up there, but he's not. Not saying, and again, it's so many things that go into it, but again, I can understand where a lot of fans, mainstream fans, come from, but I think it is also not knowing that it's there, being oblivious to it, because again, the wrestling community, as massive as it might be, especially on the internet, as massive as we might potentially think it is, it's still a small sector of a much, not everyone that's going on YouTube is watching wrestling videos. They're watching kittens, or have kittens, guns, and hot girl. And if you have that on the title, I'm sure you'd have trillions of hits because that's what people go to. Someone stupidly dancing or getting thrown off a cliff or whatever, that would get more hits than wrestling because, again, even the mainstream fans, they like the family nature of WWE or that it's such a big event feel that anything else would pale in comparison when it's like, well, how many WWE superstars actually work the crowd, actually work the actual crowd? And I'm not talking when they slap hands at the end of the show. How many of them actually are paying attention to the fans and not just worried about the cues or television. Again, it's television. Whereas, indie show, even if we've got a bunch of cameras, they're still going to placate to the fans because the fans are that's who paid to see you.
Right.
So,
every show we do, we pretty much say, support your indies because we've ran into people, like we said, we ran into people like at the Gulf Coast show when we're passing out our flyers, and it's like, have you heard this, and they're like, I only watch Monday Night Raw, but we like to say support, your locals, and just each show.
Well, again, you never really know who's going to be on an indie show, as far as who might be the next guy.
Yeah, you never know. So.
You never know. I mean, again, it's not like the territory system, especially in Texas. Everyone says, get out of Texas, go somewhere else. And I'm like, well, Texas is a big state. Why do I got to leave it? It's huge. Do I have to go to Florida? I mean, the WWE doesn't avoid Texas. I mean, they don't go, you know what, I like every state but Texas. They do come into the state. So
quite a few successful people have come from Texas. So
yeah, I mean, one of the biggest names in, a few of the biggest names, one of the great, some of the greatest wrestlers of all time have come out of the state of Texas. I kind of, I always feel slighted when I hear that, especially from guys who are, well, why are you leaving? Well, because people are telling me I need to leave to go somewhere. And it's like, okay. Mm-hmm. And then I'm kind of thinking of everyone who says leave Texas. It's like, why don't we do something here to get some, to create something so we don't have to go to the East Coast? Because I love the East Coast. I would love to be on Ring of Honor and get that media plug that's there. But at the same time, I'm like, well, why can't we do it here? I mean, it was done here before, and why can't it be done here again?
Get them to come to you.
Yeah. And again, I've always been told if you go there and you pay to be there, they're never going to pay you to stay there because you're already paying them. Mm-hmm. So, I'd rather be here. I mean, I'm at a different stage in my life or in career or whatever, and my thoughts aren't on leaving and trying to go somewhere else and start over again. Not necessarily. So,
since you touched on going out of the state, I did notice while I was watching some the Lucha Lounges on your YouTube channel that you did have that you listed that you'd worked for AAA and CMLL down in Mexico, and I'm totally fascinated with Lucha Libre. It's like a big deal for me, and I just wondered if you could talk about what brought you down there and some of your time and experience down there.
Well, I was really pretty young, and we like Chavo Guerrero had came in. Chavo Guerrero Sr. had came in, and he was he's so beloved everywhere he goes, but especially in Mexico. And same thing with some of the luchadors that would come in through our school. And I was just one of those guys that it was like me and Russell were kind of the workhorses, and we seemed to work really hard and have really exciting matches, but we weren't the biggest guys. But in Mexico, we were fairly decent-sized guys, and then they brought in a few other guys. And it was all just they wanted to have a look and see what we could do. And first thing that really strikes you is, of course, the language barrier, especially if you're not fluent or you don't speak it often, or just to go through a match and their match structure is different than American.
Right.
It's become more Americanized, but back then it was more, if you were an American coming there, you were going to do what they do. Or we were going to do some kind of hybrid, and they were going to have to slow down a little, much for you. But you still had to deal with the three falls, regardless. I mean, best 2 out of 3, it was going to last. So your wind was, most indie shows, you're going 20 minutes maybe. Most of the shows that I would do over there, especially initially, were 45 minutes or more just because there were 2 or 3 falls. Wow. And again, another major difference aside from the roads and all of that and, some of the landscape, were just the fans, just how they approached it and how Mexico approached
so much
you.
More respect.
You weren't a joke. You weren't this. It didn't matter. I was nobody at that point. I was, I was Steve DeMarco here, but it wasn't like I was Steve DeMarco, a big name over there. But they still treated me like I was a big name because I was a wrestler. We would go on it'd be the equivalent of going like to ESPN and talking wrestling, not talking MMA, not talking the next movie that's coming out. It was actual, let's talk about wrestling, let's talk about the event you're going to, let's talk about your opponents, let's talk about you, let's do this, that, and the other. And again, language barrier, and I'm, trying to listen to the guy and trying to listen to the translator and trying to come up with something witty, but it's not going to insult anyone. Yes, it was weird. But then again, the fans, too, like, just how they revere wrestlers. It's completely different. They're so appreciative. They're not there to, they're there to have a good time, but they see you as larger than life. And it doesn't matter who you are on the roster. It doesn't matter if you're the curtain jerker or the main event or somewhere in between. If you look like a wrestler and you are on the show, they treat you like you're like a rock star. And, it's just a whole different culture. Not to say that there's anything wrong with American fans, whatnot. It's just completely different. Like I tell anyone who's, in the southern states, or go to Mexico and see how it is. I mean, obviously now it's probably a little more dangerous, but it was a fun time. But I ran into a lot of political stuff both times that I tried to go down there, and went down there a few times. But it was always, they wanted a complete package, and some people didn't want to go the whole tour, and then it's like, well, it's all or nothing, and okay. It was fun for the time that I was there.
Very nice. And speaking of title matches, main events, you will be main eventing at GC PBW, or at least in the title match. I think the main event's going to be the no rope battle royal. Mm-hmm. That'll be pretty exciting. You're going to be going up against Max Muscles for the Gulf Coast Power Pro Wrestling Heavyweight Championship. How do you prepare yourself mentally for an opponent such as Max Muscles? He has the ring presence of a Gold Dust. For those who aren't aware of him, he's sort of like Gold Dust. He plays the mind games. He messes with your psychology.
Yeah, I think that's what threw me off the first time too. Was even though I've seen Max's matches, to be in there with him, it is different. Mm-hmm. Because he's not it's one of those things where he's really trying to make you uncomfortable, because it does take you off your game. And hold on one second. Sorry about that. But yeah, he's just it's a way different opponent. So preparing for him, it's kind of especially that first match, I tried to just let's make it serious so I can get in my zone, because he kind of lulls you into a false sense of everything's cool, and then there goes a right, there goes a left, and a kiss, and then you're thrown off guard, and you're pretty much walking into his finisher or whatnot, even though you're trying to avoid him. So this go around, and on top of it, it was my first match, and I don't want to make excuses because he won outright. He did kick out of the sexy kick, so I have to give him credit where credit's due, and he's a champ. He's been a champ for a year. I don't take him lightly, and I never really did take him lightly the first time. But on top of it, that was my first. We were behind the curtain was there, and they were filming. Jay was filming, so I was kind of thrown off by that too, because I wanted to make an example of my match of how to use that camera and how to really get the most out of it, because I see a lot of guys who don't. So a lot of things were playing into my mind. I was prepared to start to have my match on the November 5th at TASW, not my first match to be a title match, the main event of a show, this, that, and the other. So I think, again, my cardio wasn't quite where, I found myself just gasping for air, like right off the bat, because I think I psyched myself out, to be honest. So I've had a few matches under my belt. I know last time I was at Gulf Coast, I wanted to make a point that I was taking things very seriously, which unfortunately, Rockstar Robbie, was injured that show. But again, it was not anything personal with Robbie. It was more of a, all right, Max, I will do whatever it takes to get your title, because I did say I came here for gold, and that is my goal, is to, if I'm working for a company, I'm going to be the top guy on that company, within that company. My name will be on the marquee, my picture will be on the flyer, because I feel like I'm one of the more entertaining guys in the indies. I do more than just hype the show on Facebook. I do the Lucha Lounge, I do Behind the Curtain. you guys said it best. I'm a Texas legend, or at least on the upward swing of that, and people expect me to perform a certain way. And this Saturday, that's my plan, is to right the wrongs that happened on October 29th and actually beat Max Muscles for the heavyweight title. All due respect to him. I mean, he's been a great champion, but I think I said it on another interview not too long ago that 2012 is the year to demark out, and it starts this Saturday. So, people are in the area, even if they've never seen a wrestling show or they just watched WWE or TNA, I guarantee you, unlike every other guy, I will guarantee you will demark out. And I will prove there will be no show without Steve DeMarco, that there is no show without Steve DeMarco, only because you go to a show, I'm on it, then you go to a show that I'm not on, and you go, that DeMarco guy really made that show a lot more interesting. So, I'm looking forward to this Saturday.
I know the last show we definitely demarked out, so.
Well, I appreciate that. I want everyone to demark out because I think it's a good feeling. A good calm buzz goes. You feel happy. You feel better afterwards. I'm not going to say you're ready for a cigarette, because not everyone smokes. But
Doug over here does.
Well, then there you go. Everyone will be ready for a cigarette, except for the kids. I don't condone, but I want them to demark out as well, just in a different, like a
early
like a
Christmas present
for them. Sugar high for them.
Yeah, it's an early Christmas present to the kids.
Yeah. It will be an early Christmas present this Saturday. But every day, it's like Christmas every time I'm out there. Just
Sure.
We're in the Christmas season. It's like that, and Thanksgiving, and not Valentine's Day.
That's a hit or miss.
Maybe for your ladies. Anyway, no. Okay.
Happy late birthday. We know you just had a birthday pass.
Yes.
Yeah. That was, and I was at Gulf Coast the next day. So, I tried not to get too festive the night before, but I definitely got festive after the show. And generally, she can drink most men at the table. So,
I tried to do color commentary for your match, but it was my first time.
That's right.
So
That's right. You were out there with Jim, who got mixed up with the grappler, and
yeah, that was an interesting life event.
Yeah, I think I caught last week's show, and you were saying you're having a difficult time with commentating. I'll just say this: next time, just come by all the guys and just get whatever information you can. That way, you're just telling people more information about them. Or, think of Doomsday. Like, they tell a story. I know it's kind of hard because, with Jim, it's you just have to work kind of on, you don't want to step on each other's toes. I've tried commentating. Luckily, I always do color and never try to do play-by-play.
Right.
Simply because I don't know all the names of the moves. I mean, it's horrible to say, but it's like,
it's more difficult than it looks.
I don't know. But I'd say just go up to everyone, and get notes from them, especially finishers, or if they don't know what the name of their finisher is, it's just a bad sign. They just haven't been thinking it through.
They haven't used it enough.
Oh yeah, or they're just like, well, I never thought of it. You're like, really? You never thought of a name? I mean, I knew what the sexy kick was before I came up with it. I mean, I knew what it was going to be, and I knew I was going to call it that. I knew what the demark out was going to be before I came through. It had many different evolutions, but, I knew that was the name I was going to use, and I've tried other ones that have come and gone by the wayside. But I always remember, like, ECW, Danny Doring had so many names for so many different maneuvers, and I think a lot of that roster did, and it was great of Joey Styles, the way he would present it, because you were like, oh, wow, the name, the Anaconda of this, or, the panty dropper, or this, that, and the other. And I always thought, man, just have creative names that kind of fit your character or gimmick, so to speak.
Or like Tex Lone Star gives the I don't believe in Jesus drop kick for the kosher killer.
Yeah.
I mean, them too, man. That they're probably him and Dirty Sanchez, probably the two, like live commentators, because again, they're telling you a story. They're telling the fans, and then it doesn't come out of left field. I know a lot of we had that conversation too about on Behind the Curtain about live commentary. Does it affect? I mean, we try to do it at IWE because I felt, that's what's missing a lot of times on the indie shows, is that there is no commentary. And if you're a WWE fan or a fan of televised wrestling, you're used to hearing that commentary. And I mean, of course, at house shows or the live taping, you don't get that. But I mean, you have vignettes or something to kind of keep you, aside from just the guys grunting and, trying not to call spots too loud or what have you.
Absolutely. But we certainly do look forward to seeing you this coming Saturday. We do invite any of our local listeners to come out and check it out, support Steve DeMarco.
Mm-hmm.
We certainly do appreciate you being on our show. And,
yeah, I enjoyed my time. Was there anything else, or are we wrapping it up?
No, I think that's about it. I think we got all that we are wanting to cover for all of your information. Behind the one word and then curtain on Facebook, Behind the Curtain. Also your personal YouTube / yes, Lucha Lounge, youtube.com/DMarco, MARCO1125. Also the Dojo Productions, youtube.com/Dojo for Life.
And facebook.com/Sexy DeMarco to like Steve DeMarco on Facebook. Do it.
There you go.
You must do it. If you're my friend, then you should like me. And if you're a fan, well, you of course like me. And why haven't you liked me yet?
I have liked you, Steve.
Guys, don't be like a Cena guy fan and want to boo him. I'm a good guy to like. I'm a great wingman, and I'll help the party out. I mean, some people say I've turned water into wine. I know I've walked on water a few times, so we're all going to leave it at that. And you know what? There are people that will vouch for me. I've actually walked on water. I'm not going to really divulge how I did it.
Steve, you and I have got to party, man.
Yeah, definitely. I'm always down. You know what? I think aside from a larger portion of women to be at the shows, I think what's really missing is the after party.
Yes.
At wrestling shows.
Absolutely.
I know when I first started out, that was kind of the whole reason you do it. Aside from the performance aspect and getting yourself over and all that, it was the after party. Because it was just a reason to let loose and not care, and I think that's kind of missing. So I always invite people. I mean, especially after the shows. I'm not real familiar with Beaumont, but I'm down to do whatever because it's a Saturday night. We might as well do something.
Very cool. Yeah.
I'm sure Duggan would love to have someone drink a beer with him.
Yeah, definitely, man.
Well, is there anything you need to plug that we did not get for you?
Yeah, I was hoping we got it all, but there's always hope for more.
No. I mean, I've got a Wikipedia page. Not that I had anything to do with it. But, I mean, I probably will have a Lucha Lounge sometime this week, and then Behind the Curtain, we've said for sure we're going to have something for all the kiddies for Christmas that they will so much enjoy. So, like I said, man, I'm just out to entertain, give people a reason to demark out, and after they see me at a show, they know there won't be quite the same show without Steve DeMarco. Just going to do different variations of that catchphrase until.
Well, can we also get the if you're cool, you're already in the Lucha Lounge one?
Oh yeah. Stay cool, stay sexy, stay classy. But fans, I mean, you're listening to the Wrestling News Source with Doug, Dan, and Tyler. You're going to be in Beaumont for Gulf Coast Power Pro Wrestling. You are a big fan of the Lucha Lounge. You love Behind the Curtain. So you're all of those. But until next time, later.
Steve DeMarco, we certainly do appreciate you coming on to our show.
Thanks, Steve. We appreciate it.
Not a problem. Anytime,
Thanks, man.
y'all. If you want me to do a victory speech next week, I will gladly do it. But until then, guys, I will see you guys on Saturday.
All right. We'll see you then.
All right.